Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 6th episode of my series on how to make house music in Ableton Live 9. Today's episode we're going to be looking at chords. Chords are pitch notes and harmonics that add more depth and texture to the song. So we're going to jump right in and make another MIDI track by simply clicking right click and then insert MIDI track on the right. Once we've done that, you want to go to instruments and click on the first one that says analog. You just want to simply drag it in onto your track, just like the operator. Now we're going to record a 2-bar progression, just like by pressing record and then letting it record. There we go. So now we're going to click Shift Tab on this clip and open up our MIDI view. So now we're thinking about what chords we're going to work with, and because I know what key I'm working in, F major, I know what chords will fit. So because we're working the F major key, I'm just going to take a look at my lead, and I've decided that the two main notes are A sharp and F. So because I know that, I'm going to be using the A sharp chord and the F major chord as well. Now once we come into this MIDI on our new track, we want to change the signature to 4-2. And then we want to change the start and end to 1-1-1 and 5-1-1. This is just easier to work with when I'm working with the chords in the way I'm going to do it. Of course, it's up to you, personal preference. So I'm going to start off by putting my root note, which is A sharp, on A sharp 2, working in the same kind of octave as the lead because that's probably best. I'm just going to drag out the note to probably around there. It's a good distance. I'm going to add a little bit of rhythm to these chords. And I know for a fact that the notes in the A sharp chord are A sharp, then D, and then F. So that's quite a short chord, so we're going to make it more of a progression, and then we're going to start from here, draw out these notes again, and simply put them to about there. Quite short again, but once again I'm just adding rhythm, and then from here, draw out the notes again. We can simply, if we press B to go into cursor, highlight them and then drag them all out at once. We can just bring them right there. And then from here, we're just going to press Ctrl D and then go all the way to 1-3 like we just did. And now we're going to do the exact same with the F major chord. So I'm going to go back into my draw mode by pressing B, finding the root note of F, which is right there, drawing it out for the same distance, like that. Or if you don't want to draw it all out again, simply just highlight everything we have here, duplicate it, drag it back to its position, and just move it into the F position. So now we have F, and you're going to have to move the notes about. So the next note we have to move are these notes, and we've got to move them to C, and then we've got to move the A sharps to A's. So now we can just listen to it by hitting play. After listening to it, I've decided I don't really like it, so I'm just going to mess about with it and then put it back to the way that I think will suit the song. So what I'm actually going to do is just move or delete these F chord, because I can always put it back. I'm thinking of making the first chord longer, but first I'm going to expand my view so it's a bit larger. Now I'm just going to drag these notes out like that. I'm going to bring these notes back to here, where they're going to be 4 counts long. Then I'm going to drag this note to about there. I'm going to make sure it's about that long. And now I'm going to get this chord here and just finish it up there. So now let's see what it sounds like. So now I'm starting to really like the sound of that. So what I'm going to do is just duplicate the whole thing and do what we did before and put it in F. So move all these notes to C and move all these notes to A. So now if I hit play, we've got a little nice chord progression. Remember, anytime in this video, if you want to skip to something, you can just check in the description down below for a link to a certain part in this video, in case you want to look at my settings, how I draw out my chords, etc. So now we're going to personalize our sound. So we're going to do this by pressing Shift Tab to get out of this view. And you can see here, with the analog settings, we need a more personalized sound. So if I go on the drop box down from analog and go to pad, I'm just going to look for a sound that I like, and I know for a fact that I like Chord Sweeper, so I'm just going to preview it. I like that effect, so I'm just going to drag it onto my analog or my MIDI clip, and there we have it. Now I know what settings that I like personally, so I'm just going to mess around, and you can copy what I use or you can use your own. I recommend using your own because remember, this is your song, this is your personalized experience, but whatever, it's up to you. So the first thing off, I'm going to go to the analog section and just change the octave to 0. And then I'm going to go down to this bottom section here in the Chord Sweeper section and just change the volume to 6 decibels because I really want them to stand out in the track. And I'm going to change the attack to 100 ms. Now to do this, you're going to have to type 0.1. And then in the release, I'm going to change that to about 0.9. So now if we hit play, here's what it should sound like. So I'm really liking that effect. There's loads of reverb on the end to make it sound really nice and add texture and dynamics to the song. So now we're going to add more dynamics to the track, and we're simply just going to go to MIDI effects, MIDI effect rack, and then chord arp. So once we get the chord arp, which stands for chord arpeggio, it's going to simply drag it onto our track. Now you'll see we'll have this little screen down here. So now we have to mess around with these settings. Remember, it's all personalized. Now personally, I don't really like the way the arpeggio makes the song sound, because if we listen now, kind of puts it off everywhere. So I'm actually going to turn the arpeggiator off, but use the settings that it provides. To turn it off, just simply click that device activator button. We're not changing too many settings, but what we are changing is this first shift, and instead of making it +10, we're making it +11 strength. So now if we click play to preview, here's what this should sound like. Now what I'm going to do is loop this by simply going into the MIDI selector or the MIDI clip and pressing loop, make sure it's at 1 bar, and then clicking duplicate loop. Maybe one more time as well. Clicking off loop, shift tabbing out, and now we have this. In fact, instead of making it that long, we'll just go back, length 1, duplicate loop, and there we go. Just drag this back down. Now if we listen to it with the bass and the drums, here's what it should sound like. So it's added a lot more dynamic and texture, and if we actually turn it off, here's what it would sound like at the start of the video. And then when I enable it, it's adding a lot more dynamics and texture, which is what we want the song to have. So before we finish off this video, I just want to add a few layers, and I'm going to do this because we've done it on the other tracks, and it, as I keep saying, adds more texture to the song. So I'm simply just going to duplicate this track by pressing Ctrl D, and now what we're actually going to do is we're going to change the octaves. Now if we look in the analog section of this next track, we're going to move it down all the way to the bottom to -3. So now if we play it by itself, here's what it sounds like. So it's really deep. So now if we play both of these together, here's what it should sound like. So now we're getting even more texture, which is perfect. So if I duplicate the track one more time and just move this one up, I'm going to change the octave on this one to +3. So now if we listen to this by itself, not for too long because it's got a pretty high pitched frequency. So now if we listen to them all together, so that's the only changes we have, but I'm probably going to change the really high pitched one and change the volume down a bit to about 2, because otherwise we don't really want that screeching in the viewer's ears. Now to me that's still quite loud, so I'm just going to put it at 0. Now this is sounding perfect, so what we're going to do is simply group them by pressing Control on each track and then pressing Control G. I'm going to rename the group by right clicking and pressing rename. I'm going to rename it Chords. I'm going to rename each track, so chord high for H, chord standard, and chord deep. So before we end off this video, I'm just going to show you guys what it is like with all of the layers put together. Now, like all the videos, we have to go back to the master to make sure that nothing is going over its peak. But as you can see here, the leaders and the chords are definitely. So I'm just going to bring them down a bit. And there we have it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you've learned something from it. And as usual, your comments and feedback is much appreciated because then I can learn from it. And I can also know what I'm doing really well at the moment. So if you guys enjoyed, please like, comment, subscribe, and peace.